Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? You doing okay? Great. Welcome to the Dendrinos Chapel here at Interlochen Center for the Arts. My name is Dave Griffith. I'm really proud to hit on this round number of 300. Seems very auspicious. And it's the 300th program of the 53rd year of the Academy. This evening you'll be hearing from 7 writers. It's the beginning that begins, maybe sometimes in the wee hours of the morning with an idea, and then comes to fruition here with you receiving it. I'd ask you at this time to please turn off any cell phones, electronic devices, and also please refrain from looking at them even for a moment, even glancing longingly at your screen. It'll be there. It'll be there. I'd also like to thank at this time my colleagues in the Creative Writing Department, the faculty, Francine Harris, Mika Perrine, and Leslie Tai. If I could have a round of applause for them. I feel very lucky to have such a great faculty and a faculty with such a combined number of years of experience. It makes my job a whole lot easier, and I know that it really goes a long way to supporting our students and bringing them to this evening. Just a few more very brief comments I'd like to make about this evening's program. We're a diverse group. We have students from Pennsylvania, we have students from South Korea, we have students from John would like me to say that he's from St. Louis, Missouri, and not Manchester, Missouri. We have also students from Michigan and students from Mahwah, New Jersey, northern New Jersey. And this is one of the things that I find very important and unique about Interlochen, which is that we bring students from all over the country and across the world here to this campus in the Great North Woods to come together and share our work and support one another and challenge one another to become better artists. The other reason I wanted to point out where all of these writers are from is because you're going to hear that in their work. It might not be readily apparent, but you're going to hear it in the word choice. You're going to hear it in the settings. You're going to hear it in the kinds of characters that you meet. And I think that's one of the great ways in which literature plays a role in our society, is that it leads us out of ourselves. It makes us not so solipsistic and gets us thinking about others. So you're going to hear about a young girl who skipped school to go chase cats. You're going to hear about an underwater expedition that runs into some pretty some trouble. You're going to hear about a drive down a sort of mythic interstate. You're going to hear about a girl standing with a can of cold spray paint in the basement of her ex-boyfriend's house. You're going to hear so many really. Oh, you're going to hear about Nicki Minaj too this evening. So we're really gonna run the gamut here. Lastly, I'd like to thank those of you that are joining us live online on the World Wide Web. Welcome here to Interlochen. So without further ado, I'd like to invite up to the microphone Emily Boyle.
Act 1. I already knew it was Orion's belt. Stop trying to change the subject. It's not romantic. It's a funeral with fireworks, lighting your grandma's corpse on fire, warming your hands with the flames. It's little boy in the air, exploding a planet away above Hiroshima. Wars end with salient scars. Knives make good first impressions. Brighter is better. Brighter is remembered. Canis Major, nothing but a hound dog. David's star broken into 6 pieces, suspended in the air we remember. Spinning in Dad's office chair, light switch turned down, desk lamp circling. our Halley's Comet, metal shades so hot that it burned our fingers. After church. I used to dip my fingers in hot candle wax, the initial burns worth becoming smooth, anonymous, like an ice cream cone from Dairy Queen. A thin shell of chocolate drizzled over vanilla hardens, but the wax isn't as sweet when it drips down your cheek, a plastic teardrop only Barbie could understand. I learned on TV that you can't burn your fingerprints away, that they'll just grow back in the same place, that you'd be better off getting rid of your hands altogether. What would Mother say if she found out? She'd call you double nubs and ask why you stopped snapping, get angry when you didn't clap at your sister's dance recital, write a poem about her handless son who got arrested for petty theft. White chalk circles for punishing naughty children. There's broken glass in the bathtub again. You're watching Daddy circle a house with a brown belt. A storm will knock the power out tonight, and as you flick the light switch on and off, your sister says you'll get electrocuted, says there's not enough money for another night in a hospital bed. Not since they had to remove a ball of mozzarella from your stomach and found 6-week-old pizza boxes beneath your dresser. The one covered in burns from the hair straightener and notches left by a gift-wrapped box cutter. Your thighs are a dresser. The smell of cigarettes rides shotgun with you around town. Grease stains make it hard to read the help wanted section of the newspaper you picked up from 7-Eleven. By 4 in the morning, it's back to your single bedroom apartment, carpet covered in half-empty beer bottles, because you never start what you finish. You start your car. The black and white curb stomp. A king on his throne of rotten banana peels, crouched with the flies and maggots. You thought you'd leave this gun slum alive. This, the neighborhood where we squeezed lemonade from bullet casings. The neighborhood where Yosemite Sam bolted off the fire escape. Some call it suicide, but I say it was one too many sarsaparillas. Now he rests in peace with the scantily clad slatterns, swimming in Sedona-melted milkshakes mixed with the semen of strangers. Enjoy your stupor in its sewers, while I wipe fuchsia wax and euthanasia hunks off my Jordans. Say hello to the golden teeth swaddled in black bubblegum and savor your mouth full of concrete, only the finest post-mortem delicacy. This is what happens to the gutter ulcers of New York. They get strung up in serpent cinctures, living nooses made of 100% boa constrictor. They get cocooned in their own personal manila envelopes, licked like vanilla ice cream cones, and stamped by yours truly, with the soles of my black ranch boots. Caribou. Don't let my body rot under 6 feet of mud. I never found fossils all that interesting. If you want a memorial, buy a flower pot and plant my baby teeth. Maybe they'll bloom into Venus flytraps. Don't burn my body to cinders. The only people who need powder are cocaine addicts. No, treat me like that old sweater in the back of your closet. Treat me like outgrown toys because the world is a giant Goodwill. Give my spine to a grandma that can't afford a cane. Donate my eyes to a mother who needs a pair on the back of her head. During the summer, let the kids throw my kidneys like water balloons, heat my pancreas and the microwave, sit in a circle and play hot potato. Give my skull to your boyfriend so he'll stop asking you for head. Cut off an ear and keep it in your pocket, just in case you need someone to listen. Weave my hair into a butterfly net, catch a bird and keep it in my rib cage. When it dies, play it in elegy. Use my teeth as piano keys, pluck my vocal cords like a harp, poke holes in my windpipe to make a flute. Give my heart to the people who hurt you, because they don't deserve yours. Thank you. Our next reader is Nani Wakas.
Hey guys. This is an excerpt taken from the beginning of a story where we meet Gordon and Neil, two boys who eventually become obsessed with a video game. Pixelated Humanity. I looked at the back of the packaging. The cover had literally nothing on it that explained why Neil had given the game to me. It was called Naivety, which made me laugh because most game companies and gamers thought that using one-word titles made your game, or you, sound cooler. The cover was just the standard picture of a battle-ravaged landscape. The usual barely clothed hero stood at the edge of a smoking crater. She was dressed in what I assumed was the sexy Halloween version of medieval spy gear. And she was standing in such a way that both her breasts and her butt were clearly visible. The game was obviously appealing to its target audience, 14-year-old boys whose last intimate experience with the female body was breastfeeding. Needless to say, it failed to attract my attention, but Neil was into it. I looked up at his semi-clean room. The bed was unmade, as usual, but the Borderlands 2, Call of Duty, Halo, and Bioshock posters that covered his walls were movie set straight. He'd started cleaning his room, or at least kept the mess under his bed, when he snagged a bit of internet fame. He'd said something stupid like, "I gotta put up a good front, Gord." He'd never cleaned when I came over. I'm still not sure what that said about me. "Dude, what the hell is a hyper-realistic fantasy first-person shooter?" I asked, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. Neil smiled broadly. "What has humankind done for thousands of years? Tell stories about dragons and ginormous creepy crawlies from the swamps. And what games are the most successful? FPSs. Stick the two together and you get the best game ever." "Do you work for," I checked the icon on the front of the game, "Cicada Games' advertising branch?" "Gordon," he pleaded, "but hyper-realistic fantasy? I mean, come on, Neil. If this isn't your thing, I promise that I'll stop trying to get you to play video games with me, and we can go back to reading comics and throwing shit fits about whether Marvel's scientific explanations are better than DC's supervillains." Which, may I add, they are. It was very difficult not to tell Neil that he was completely wrong. The supervillain argument was one that we'd had way too often, usually between classes, and had unfortunately set us both up for a life of combined social isolation. I looked at the cover again. I'll admit it did look kind of cool, but the last time Neil tried to get me to play a game was a year ago, when I nearly flipped his setup and noped the hell out of there. First-person shooters, or any game that was in first person, were Neil's favorites. He'd played them competitively for a few years now. He streamed some of his matches, and I joined him as often as I wanted to, which was never. Well, I'd streamed with him once when he wanted to document me trying out his newest game suggestion. That was when the flipping and the noping happened. It was a dystopian FPS, and there was no way that I was ever revisiting that underwater monstrosity of a horror game ever again. It didn't help that my playthrough of the first 10 minutes were amusing enough to boost Neil into gamer fame. "You gonna make me stream this one too?" I asked. "No way. You agreed." Neil danced in a small circle, waving his arms around like some sort of orangutan happily summoning Satan. His smile dropped slightly when he turned back to me. "Are you okay with this?" I said yes, didn't I? "Technically, you didn't," Neil beamed. "Are you gonna stream this?" I asked again. The urge to punch him in the arm for being a smartass was hard to resist, but past experience told me that changing the subject was a better way to deal with him. "The fans have been asking for you from, like, day one." Neil sat down onto the chair that he'd stolen from the dining room and held out his hand. "Toss me the game." I did, and Neil ripped the packaging off. We downloaded the game while he explained how this whole thing was going to work. "I'll be talking to chat with this." He set his laptop down on the edge of the desk and pulled the rolling chair that I sat in front of his huge monitor. "And you'll be playing on the computer. Don't worry about the fans, they all love you." I don't really care what they think, I just don't want to see videos of me freaking out plastered all over the internet again. Being made into a meme isn't that bad. Neil said as he started the game. The screen went dark as Cicada Games sparked into existence. A white half circle with a parallelogram connected to it, and the game's name in the parallelogram, replaced the game company's logo. Then, the symbol for the game dissolved, leaving the screen blank. Schematics for a rapid-fire crossbow faded onto the monitor. As far as I could tell, the schematics were accurate. This wasn't going to be a game with made-up guns that could kill your enemies with homing bolts of electricity. This crossbow was something that die-hard fans could build and use for cosplays of their favorite characters. Neil picked up a headset from his desk and slipped it on. He opened his streaming site and ran some tests with the cameras to make sure that they hadn't broken down since the last time he streamed, which was last night. Once everything was ready, he clicked a button on the screen and smiled. Hey, hey, everyone! The chat list exploded with messages like, "Dude, please tell me that this is a thing," and "Good afternoon, Teflon." Every time I saw him stream, I wanted to tell him that he failed at making one-word names sound epic, because Neil honestly thought that Teflon was a cool name. "As you know," Neil said, and I had the sinking suspicion that he was dragging this out just to torture both me and his fans, "I told you last night that Gordon Blue might be streaming today." He turned the camera to me. "Say hi to everyone, Gordon." I slumped in the seat and hid my embarrassed flush. Neil laughed. "What are they saying?" I asked, still hiding my face. "I think they're doing a version of the Hogwarts song, but with your name." "You got Potterheads in the fan base?" I looked up. "Dude, Potterheads have always been in the fan base." He pulled my chair closer to his, which meant that I nearly got dumped on the floor because I was still trying to be an embarrassed lump on his desk. Neil handed me his headset so the fans could hear me. "If this is another suspense game, I just want you guys to know that I don't usually scream like the scared version of a tween at a Disney Channel concert," I told chat. "Just press start already." I pressed the start game button and sighed as the beautiful schematic disappeared. What had I just agreed to? Thank you. The next reader will be Jenny Kim.
Hi, I'm reading an excerpt from the story called His Warning. His Warning. I do not remember exactly what happened that day, except that I left school without telling anyone and went to chase cats with the boy. Dozens of cats freely roamed around my neighborhood, in the parking lots and on the roads to my home. Walking from my school, my eyes started all around looking for cats. As soon as I saw one crawling underneath the parked cars or the bushes around the apartments, I screamed and chased the cat until it disappeared into the bushes. When I looked up, a second or two later, with a seemingly innocent smile on my face, I would usually find people looking at me strangely. And there's also this boy, who is vivid in my memory. He's the one whom I can only call boy, because I still have so much hatred for him. When I think about him, only his warning comes to my mind. Come outside at midnight, okay? Or I will hit you. The images of the boy and me linger together. Even though my mom jokes about the cats, I feel embarrassed talking about it now, 9 years later. She just chuckles. It's funny, Jenny, but it's not funny when I think about the other part of me, the part that my mom never knew. One part of me didn't have any idea of the world I was in. When my mom came home, I was reading a book. It was 1 a.m. I thought everybody, not just people around me, but all the people in the world might be staying up at the time because my parents were up. They told me it was time to go to bed, and I went to bed. But another part of me was very focused on what was going on around me when I was at home late at night or when I was at school every day. I was ready to do anything. Our homeroom teacher seemed calm and composed, but when we didn't do our homework, she became irritated. When it came homework checking time in the middle of the day, she would make 30 of us in one line come to her desk and open our textbooks, revealing torn pages, eraser traces, and doodles, while she checked one particular person's homework. During those times, her small eyes inspected us, only revealing her old strictness. She always seemed to know who hadn't done homework. She would randomly call out someone's name from the line of us, and they would walk to her brown desk, open their textbooks, and wait for the quick slap. One day, I started to have an impulse to run away to somewhere where I could feel freer. My grandmother didn't hit me, my sister didn't hit me, and even my parents didn't hit me. Since the other students didn't react to her action, they were just hit. I thought it was alright for her to hit me too, so I never questioned her hitting. The fear of being hit by her exhausted me in a way I couldn't describe. Like, the more and more I was hit, the more and more I didn't want to do any homework, and the more and more my pace walk into the school would slow down. That was why I didn't tell my mom about the teacher, though my other part could have. Her hitting was definitely affecting me, but I was worried that if my mom intervened, the teacher would find out I was the one who got her into trouble. My mom was too busy working anyways. There were more days that she didn't even pick up my calls. Every time I was hit, I dreamt of the ways I could skip school. One day, when I was thinking about another escape, a boy in my class walked up to me all of a sudden and asked me if I wanted to chase cats. I thought it was strange of him, who had never talked to me such as cats and cats. But I was into his idea because I was ready to do anything. Whatever it would be, it was going to be more fun than studying. After school, we would hang out at the dumpsters near the surrounding apartments waiting for the cats. I had seen cats roaming around near these dumpsters a lot of times, so I knew where to start looking. I was happy at first, but as days went on, I started to be more anxious than before because the boys started to direct me. Sometimes when this memory flickers in my mind, I just marvel at how this little piece of that time is so vivid in my mind when all other memories, all other important routines of my childhood, taking piano lessons or going to my neighbor's house every evening, which seemed more influential at the time, are no longer as vivid. Why didn't I ever tell my mom about the boy threatening me? Why did I eventually begin skipping classes to chase cats? To answer those questions, I feel like I need to be a child again. Thank you. Our next reader is John Baird.
Hello. Jackie. I'm sitting on a small metal chair on my parents' balcony. The sky is colored with pink and purple clouds swirling around a twilight sky. On the radio next to me, I can hear Nicki Minaj rapping about starships and NyQuil. I bet she's in a Tylenol pink rocket, astroturfing her past with dull-lighted rhinestones, until she becomes a part of the shimmering, distant Milky Way. Happenstance with a sideways glance towards Frontenac, I spot a blinking red light like a glaring dot on a polka dot dress for Jacqueline Kennedy. I'm sure if a satellite could breathe, she would be swooped into the nearest interview with Oprah and the rest of the media vultures, nipping at her past, her present, her creation. They will take her and give her a shortened and snappy version of her name. Let's call her Jackie. At the height of her fame, she'll circle the globe, have friends with Stepford smiles, until Jackie's bright light fades, Jackie's body, shredded by scraps of other space garbage. Then there will be no Michael Bay explosions for her, with an upward flare of dramatic music to make an audience cry or be on the edge of their seats. Only silence, pitying a growing metal cocoon surrounding a witless, wet rock. Okay. Say man, can't hand a fan and wand and fawn at tan cats. Say man, walks a shark and an ass far away, Rwanda sachets and malts fall nasty. Say man, fat cans and cats at Arby's ate ash and tax, backs away flaws and cash at ya. Say man, tall malls stall cars, Fargas Falls, splat, and Pat's bald rad hat. Rat halls call Allah and a gay bar. Caked clay. Vacuous. Diane Sawyer is on the television talking to a reporter in Iraq. The area he is in is only lit by the moon and orange embers reclining in dirt. He skulks cautiously through charred meadows and bodies, wearing a bleached deer skull to cover his eyes. A line of dewdrops form on the skull's brow. The television camera never cuts to faces, only shots of blackened hands and knees. Staring at those maddening images, I wish I could line my brain with eyes to gain some understanding. Drowsy, I close my eyes, and through my mind's eye, I awaken to fruitful orchards, orange clay crags in the distance. Raindrops scatter around me, creating a thin mist shrouding a bright moon. I'll walk mindlessly, mud mashing through my toes. The rain flows like peach juice squashed by choleric fists. An apple drops from a tree, exploding on the ground. Light pulp sloshes under my feet. Sweet lies, I know the fruit contains loveless cyanide. Not even the moon's broom shades it. The heat, boiling the intestines of Sisyphus, like Prometheus chained atop Mount Vesuvius, screaming to the gods for repentance as their blind vicars yell hellfire through a storm of stinging rain under the vacuous moon. It is night. Through my window, shining, the looming moon's presence hangs high. And just an explanation for my final piece tonight. This is an excerpt from a short story about a journalist sent to an ancient city in Central Europe, sort of, where archaeologists have discovered kind of like this hidden tomb in the city called Yunheim. And for most of the history of the city, it's been subjected to like really awful, cruel rulers and tyrants. And the longer that this journalist stays in the city, the more the lines between what's real and not real begin to blur into like this bizarre and horrifying nightmare. So it's called Auslander. My job was simple. I was to come to Yunheim and do a couple of interviews with the locals and some of the city's leaders. A local inn called the Grün Hausplatz was gracious enough to let me stay with them while I was there. The small plane I took landed about 2 hours away from the city, so I had to have a taxi drive me all the way to the inn in Yunheim. It was early morning. The road to the city was long. On either side of the road, there seemed to be nothing but open, rocky fields. On the horizon, I could make out the mountain range that gave Yunheim its name. On the side of one of these mountains stood the city. After about an hour and a half into the driving, I was finally able to make out the city's skyline, black and jagged like an old sailor's rotten teeth. Yunheim always had an unyielding, almost oppressive fog that swirled around the faded red cobblestone streets. They say the fog gives the dead a chance to mingle with the living. I arrived at the inn late in the evening. The innkeepers gave me my room key and helped me bring my luggage to my room. The inn looked like a tacky parody of a medieval lodge. There seemed to be more animal heads than wallpaper in the hallways. The place smelled of dust and dissatisfied honeymoon sex. My room was painted a deep lavender color with periwinkle moldings around the wall. Above my bed hung a large ram's head, its horns curled like a rigid rhythm ribbon, the kind you see gymnasts use. Even as I laid in bed, I always saw it out of the corners of my eyes. Finally, I managed to fall asleep. I saw creatures that looked like skinned humans descend onto the streets of Yunheim. They seemed to be everywhere. One by one, people filed out of their homes and began to flay themselves, shedding their skin. Their hands seemed to envelop and toss me into a deep hole. Only when I thought I knew I would die did it dawn upon me that I was dreaming. Free now from the fear of death, I willed myself out of the hole and fled. Yet their pursuing cries still followed me. Do you really think you can't die in your dreams? With uncertain feet, I ran through the Yunheim streets. The skinned creature's feet and hands seemed to dissolve, and from this puddle of flesh, bullets took shape, like living creatures. I could almost hear them breathing. They were buzzing like bees, dancing around me in the hundreds, chasing me off the rocky cliffs of the city and into a murky sea. Through sharks and thrashing krakens, I swam on for what seemed to be hours, until I rose among roses. Surrounding this meadow were tremendously tall trees. The trees dwarfed me as I rose slowly. It was then I noticed bumps forming on my skin. Then a beetle's head poked out of my forearm. More ugly bumps stretched the inside of my skin. I could now feel hundreds of bugs crawling beneath my skin. They tore my skin apart. Flesh falling from my open wounds, they and I became one. An unbearable hum took form around me. Okay, thank you. Our next reader is Alyssa Grant.
Hi everyone. This story is set in a sort of alternate Earth in which the marine life is much larger and much more aggressive. And in this excerpt, a group of oceanographers are searching for their colleague Monica, and the main character is a young man named Adam. Into the abyss. Our submersibles are compact and can only be operated by one pilot, so there isn't much room to move around or stretch your legs. On the bright side, the vessels move incredibly fast and are even armed with things like harpoon guns that we use to fight off the more vicious members of the sea, should the need arise. It was Monica's idea to add the weapons, and she also designed them. A cold seed starts to grow in my stomach when I settle into my sub. While I know Monica is more than capable of defending herself, I begin to share some of Sarah's uneasiness. Our parents weren't the first people to die while exploring the ocean, and they won't be the last. I just don't want Monica to be next. An image of her perpetually smiling face finds its way into my brain. I think of the night before she left, when we sat out on the balcony and watched the sun as it slid closer and closer to the ocean, setting the clouds on fire with bright hues of pink and orange. I remember making her laugh until her glasses nearly fell off. She looked at me like she had something to tell me, but at the last moment she closed her mouth in a tight-lipped smile and turned back towards the sun. She kept fiddling with the edges of her skirt, and I realized she was nervous. Seeing Monica nervous was even stranger than imagining myself being anything other than a member of Aqua 7. I had wanted to ask her what was wrong, but I hadn't. I wish I had. I sigh and power up the engine. The cockpit glows with dozens of switches and buttons, and I slip on my headset. The lethargic rumble of the engine is strangely calming. I press a button on my headset, and small square holograms of my teammates flicker to life in the corner of the submersible. Monica's square is black. Is everyone ready, Sarah? We reach the mesopelagic zone in mere minutes. The light from the surface rapidly fades, but I can make out the streamlined contours of swordfish, pods of dolphins, and the malleable forms of jellyfish as they aimlessly wander the twisting currents. A rosy pink squid drifts into my sub and latches onto the cockpit window. Oddly, its pupils are diamond-shaped, and its irises seem to get brighter as the sea gets darker. It rides with me for a few moments, then detaches itself and disappears into the darkness. We pair up in groups of 2. My sister is with Brian, and I'm with Felix. Pairing up is a precaution we normally don't take unless we're absolutely positive it's too dangerous to travel alone. It's difficult for the subs to travel quickly when they're close together, as their pilots must always be aware of any sudden shifts in the currents, which can make you crash into your partner. "What's that face for, Adam?" Sarah asks. I hadn't realized I was frowning. "This is just going to slow us down," I say. "Shouldn't we wait until we're further out?" "Better safe than sorry," she says. He has a point. Felix says, stretching his arms as far as his sub will let him. "At this speed, it'll take ages to reach Monica." "We'll be in unknown territory soon," Brian tells us. "It's safer this way. It'll take longer, yes, but we'll be Western Sea throws at razorbacks or blightfish took one of us unawares, eh?" A tingle goes down my spine. Razorback sharks aren't much bigger than a human man. But they have sharp scales on their backs that can cut through anything, and they're very aggressive in groups. Blightfish, on the other hand, are small, ugly things with bloated bodies and dull. I sigh again and lean into my seat. It's going to be a long day. If you don't get attacked by anything, a cruise through the ocean is as uneventful as a nighttime flight in an airplane, only there's the promise of solid ground in the air, and myriads of glittering lights dot the distant earth. Below my submersible is nothing but a gaping hole. It gets worse when we enter the abyss itself, being in the epipelagic and mesopelagic zones, where sunlight easily permeates the water. And allows me to see what's in front of me. This darkness provides excellent cover for predatory creatures. Even though we have weapons, it's likely they'll make the first strike and vanish into the shadows before we can retaliate. Sarah and Brian both tense and feel it to a halt when the subs in front of us shut down. We nearly crash into them. "Sarah? Brian?" I tap my microphone. "Can you hear me?" They don't answer. Felix's mouth drops so far I can see the little gap between his front teeth. "Adam?" he says. "Kill your engine." I lose contact with Felix, so I have no choice but to obey. I'm left in absolute darkness and silence. I can hear my heartbeat and breathing, but nothing else. As my sub drifts away from the others, a line of bioluminescent spots weaves into view, swaying like seaweed. As they move, they pulse like a dying heartbeat, alternating between white and cyan with each flat, unable hinged jaw. A ridge of translucent spikes lines the creature's back. As the beast approaches, I shrink back and pray it doesn't see me or hear my heart, which is slamming against my ribs like a caged shark. As it swims past my sub, it parts its maw and releases a shrill screech that reminds me of a fork scraping against a plate. My entire vessel vibrates. I throw my hands over my ears and grip my teeth as I wait for the horrible sound to pass, and when it does, my ears are still ringing. Many moments pass before we are absolutely certain it's safe to turn our engines back on and regroup. "Everyone all right?" Brian asks. Slowly but surely, the 3 holograms return. Everyone looks fine, just shaken. What the hell was that?" Felix stutters. "The mother of all viperfish?" Sarah and Brian both were in its territory. I swallow the lump of fear in my throat. The coward in me wants to return to the surface, but I don't allow myself to turn my sub around. Monica is still out there somewhere. "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" I almost jump out of my seat when the familiar voice reaches my ears. It's muffled by static and difficult to understand, but I know immediately who it belongs to. "Monica," Sarah exclaims, "where are you? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she answers. "I think something happened to my communication device. I can't hear you very well. But I'm fine, just lost. I must have miscalculated my course." Her hologram appears in the corner, but it's fuzzy and indistinct. "If you can't find me soon, head back home without me. Please. There's something wrong with this part of the sea. Thank you." Our next reader is Sean Siegel.
Thank you all for being here. I'm going to be reading a few pieces. Northwest Highway. Left in America. You were wearing a white skirt and white knee socks with a green rim. You wanted to crash. You would only drink bottled Fiji water like a Venus flytrap. Vicious. Your favorite word was skank. The way it dripped from your silver mouth, your gravel brain pretending to slip sex into my crevices. Blue, like your neck, like the way you were round when you said blue. Blue sweat too. That won't make for a good Polaroid, babe. Won't your mama be worried since you bleached your hair, stinging? You know, fake nails break skin easier. Eat some flies too, decapitate their eyes. Lips, teeth, tip, tongue. July 2000. Divorce papers. I threw his leftover Jack Daniels eggs, but she fished them out like trout. It was summer, and I kissed girls over the peeling white paint of my windowsill. Every night I cleaned my fingernails of dirt and took cold showers. Every day my pores pooled with sweat and my palms calloused from shovels. Vegetables bloomed slowly, but somehow I always forgot to cover the bursting asparagus. Mom liked them pale. In his room, I painted over the marks where he punched the walls. I turned them into green succulents, surviving the hottest beatings of sun with the least water. My mother drank sweet tea in our dried-up pool, and I watched the sky, pretending to swim. At night, I dreamt of painting my mother's bruises into flowers. Roses with sharp thorns were her favorite, so I made her broken face a trellis of them. When it was too hot to work, I walked up the road on the hot asphalt. I licked ice cream from the palms of my hands where it melted and was another customer, anonymous, who flirted with the green-eyed girl at the cash register. Her smile for me bode promises of food cart tacos and sharing canoes, promises I knew I wouldn't keep. When I found his old truck outside the 7-Eleven, I slit his tires like throats. I was always Daddy's little devil. When I couldn't sleep, I washed my mother's laundry. When she couldn't sleep, she woke me up and we finished 1,000-piece puzzles at 4 a.m. At the farm, I heard a girl talk about getting over a boy. She said, "I know it was me who told him to go, but it still hurts like hell, even if he was dirt." Praying mantis. When we moved into our new house, my father found a gun in the basement and a poster of the crucifixion by Salvador Dali in the fireplace. My father didn't have a gun license. We were not religious. The rifle had been sleeping in a panel in the wall, dust-coated and surrounded by bullets. I saw a pig surrounded by tiny piglets. I saw the pig being shot through the forehead. I saw Jesus and his bleeding palms staring down at me. I wondered if my father had had a gun license in Iraq. I wondered if he had ever shot someone through their forehead. I wondered if he had ever stared down a gun. I lifted the rifle so its barrel pressed into my forehead and pretended Jesus' bleeding palms were pushing the gun to my skin. My father found me like that. I was on my knees. It was the closest I had ever been to prayer. Interstate 43 collected images. Gradient nights give way to gridlock mornings. Lines on the road are increasingly more neon. I am in the passenger seat. From the back, Whitman, stop from your throat. Your radio station breeds black holes. Souls and fluid chunks rise from gendered dead. Your voice echoes through stereo like Ginsberg. Ate fire in paint hotels. Grimy rest stop with pink lights is. We pass tattooed griffined roller coasters. We pass faces illuminated only by telephone screens. Walt yells, "My omnivorous lines and must." Trees flash by, chopping parallel roads like a butcher's knife. Your voice is echolocation. I can see road signs that quote Whitman and Ginsberg instead of directions. Allen, sailors, rising men. You peel back your skin and show me your bones. Whitman calls to the night. This grass is very dark to be from. We pass salt lakes with floating corpses and storm clouds on a planet 15 feet above us. You reach your hand in these. Ginsberg, where you bang on the catatonic, our skylight, chasing our cars, scraping over the sound of your voice. Your hands have never been so soft as when coated in ink. Like Walt Whitman, corpse with its dabbled hair, I note. In the mirror, you adjust your makeup, mascara dripping liquid gold. I pay the toll booth with shell lipstick cases. Ginsberg says to drop angelic bombs, the hospital. The next day, we stop the car on a ley line. You give me a ring of wormholes. Fresh lemons drop onto the dust around my my feet. Walt looks at you, translucent mold of me. Moles grow eyes slowly, and the engine spews sterling silver. Walt smiles. Dreamt and made incarnate. We leave the car to be overgrown by phosphorescence. Our silkworm blanket falls to the moss. Ghosts lie parallel to our sleeping forms. And Whitman sees the tubercular sky surrounding. The canyons above are filled with chlorine. Think that I kissed you, but you are urban myth. Thank you.
Our final reader is Sophie Coates.
Hello. So I'm going to read a short story, excerpt of a short story called When You Think of Oreos. After Daniel cheated on you, you got more daring. For instance, this can of cold spray paint would not be in your hands poised to spray right now if you had stayed shy and courteous. Though your mother would disagree. You were never courteous. You convince yourself that Daniel has ruined you. He deserves this. But you in more ways breaking your heart. You touch the scars on your back. This is physical proof that Daniel has made you suffer, even if that suffering was voluntary. This was after Daniel made the football team and his shirts began to outline the smooth ridges of muscle. He started saying things like man and bro and dude, and he started talking about you. Well, about having sex with now. Told him you liked Oreos because you knew he hated being called one. In the cafeteria there was a clear split. The white kids filled most of the tables, and then there was the black table. Though no one ever called it, it's not like everyone didn't know. The football players would switch between both. You remember the day after tryouts. You couldn't see the way he looked at you, like he didn't even really want to be next to you. He said, the guys wanted me to eat at their table today, team stuff, you know. Coach thinks we should eat together. Yeah, that makes sense. Your hold on your backpack tightened as if it was the last thing you could get a grip on. I'll just go eat in the library. I had some stuff I needed anyway. He smiled, his lips tugging over his teeth in that slow way that made your heart pick up its pace. You're the best. When he kissed your forehead, you closed your eyes. In a way, you knew this was the beginning of the end. He was outgrowing your hallway lunchtime dates, your separation from the rest of the school. He was outgrowing you. The scars are from the second time you had sex. You were hoping it would be better than the first, or if anything, a little bit less awkward. You were in his basement, stripped bare, your back against the cold cement, and when you felt him, you also felt the first press of glass, but instead of telling him to stop, you bit your lip. This action became familiar, putting him before you, putting his words to your worth, the only proof of your sacrifice, the torn skin on your inner lip. Back then, you would not tell him when he hurt you. You expected him to ask, to see it, to know. But now you are not waiting for him to ask. You want to tell him how he hurt you in a way he cannot ignore. You decide to write out, "I hate Oreos" across his basement wall, even though this is not a true statement in any way, shape, or form. You do And maybe it was. Maybe that's what everything you ever did was. When you and Daniel got together, your self-esteem was at its peak. You remember one time, sitting in his car wearing the one you knew, the one you loved, the one everyone called Oreo. He played with your hair. "I keep thinking," he said, "you're such a strange girl." You laughed against his arm, the vibrations running through the both of you. "Thanks," you said. When he laughed, you could hear it in his chest. "That sounded bad, but what I mean is you're not like most girls. Like you needed another reminder." He felt you shift. "That's not a bad thing. I like it. You're yours," he said. "You're beautiful," he said, and then he laughed. "And mine," he added. You were finally starting to believe him when he said it. That was then. And this is now, and now you are starting to wonder how many girls and how many cars had heard their boyfriends call them beautiful. How many girls Daniel will tell the same thing in his beat-up green Jeep. At least you were the first for Daniel. That had to mean something, or maybe it didn't. Maybe you were just another girl in another car with another boy. Maybe you were just another cliche. You hear footsteps. The spray paint shakes. You mess up. 2 minutes ago, you wanted this. But now when you see him, his black t-shirt like a second skin, the crazy kinky curls you loved so much gone and replaced with a buzz cut, you do not want to see him. He sighs when he sees you, and then it hits. The sudden diffusion of anger, like you are a balloon and seeing him deflates you. You are not half as angry at Daniel as you thought you were. He stares at you, his body sagging against the wooden staircase. You picture your hands running beneath his shirt. You used to tell him you loved him once ridiculous. Your sight coming from the flickering in the basement's one light bulb, against the skin of his neck, always in whispers as if your words could snap the rubber band that kept the two of you pulled together. Then he says, "Aren't you going to explain yourself? Tell me how much you hate me." You look down at yourself because his words aren't harsh. They are soft with pity, and you hate them. You want to say you are angry because you are not sure if your mother loves you, and you know your father does not love you, and now it becomes clear that Daniel does not either, and you are angry because you loved them, still love them, and you do not understand on his basement floor he had meant it then. Was he still responsible for something he said a month ago, a couple months ago? You have seen love, and now you have seen how it fades. The only purpose for this heartache in your eyes is to tell you what never to do again, but parts of you cannot give away so freely. Your scars burned. You look at him and you do not want to fight. You don't want revenge when he is just going to stand there and take it because he feels sorry for you. The spray paint drops from your hand and you look him in the eye with newfound bravery and thank him. You thank him for dating you, and then for breaking up with you, and for screwing his new girl, and even for the scars on your back that taught you how not to love. You do this because he made you feel beautiful for 2 seconds. And before you turn to leave him, you thank him for that too. Thank you.
Thank you.